The crowd of dusty travelers at Pendleton Station parted as Olivia McBride descended from the train, her worn leather boots hitting Oregon soil for the first time. The year was 1885, and the promise of a new beginning hung in the air along with the coal smoke from the locomotive. She clutched her small valise with white-knuckled determination, scanning the busy platform for a face she'd never seen before: her new employer, Thomas Lawson. The telegram had been clear enough. Housekeeper needed at the Lawson Ranch, 5 miles outside of Pendleton. Good wages. Respectable work. It was exactly what Olivia needed after fleeing her life in Boston, though her heart still ached with the weight of everything she'd left behind. "Miss McBride." Olivia turned to find a tall man in a dust-covered hat standing before her. His weathered face held none of the softness she'd expected from their correspondence, but his eyes were kind beneath the shadow of his brim. This wasn't Thomas Lawson, she knew immediately. This man was younger, perhaps 30 to her 23 years. "Yes," she replied, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I'm Olivia McBride, Owen Lawson." He touched the brim of his hat. "My father sent me to fetch you. He's laid up with gout and couldn't make the trip himself." Owen Lawson, the son. Olivia recalled the brief mention in one of Thomas's letters. A rancher like his father, unmarried and by all accounts, dedicated solely to the family business. He stood before her now, all 6 feet of him solid and imposing, a man shaped by the harsh landscape around them. "I appreciate you coming, Mr. Lawson." Olivia lifted her chin slightly. "I'm ready whenever you are." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, at her composure. Many women traveling alone to the frontier appeared more timid, she supposed. But timidity was a luxury Olivia had left behind in Massachusetts, along with her former life. Wagons this way. Owen reached for her valise, his fingers brushing hers for the briefest moment. "Is this all you've brought?" "Everything I need," she answered simply. The truth was more complicated. Everything she owned had been sold to pay her father's gambling debts after his death 3 months prior. What remained could fit in a single bag: 2 dresses, undergarments, a hairbrush, and the gold locket containing her mother's portrait. Her mother, who had died bringing her into the world, leaving Olivia with only a fading daguerreotype to remember her by. Owen led her through the bustling streets of Pendleton, past the general store and saloon, the newspaper office and the sheriff's office. The town was smaller than Boston, but vibrant in its own way, a place of possibility, where the wilderness still pressed close against the edges of civilization. "Pendleton's growing fast," Owen commented as they reached a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 chestnut horses. "Railroads brought all sorts of folks, some good, some trouble." "And which am I, Mr. Lawson?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. His eyes met hers and the corner of his mouth twitched. "Yet to be determined, Miss McBride." The ride to the Lawson Ranch was mostly silent, broken only by Owen's occasional comments about landmarks they passed or bits of local history. Olivia watched the landscape unfold before her: rolling hills dotted with sagebrush, the distant blue mountains rising majestically against the sky. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that made her heart beat faster. "The ranch has been in our family for 20 years, Owen said as they crested a hill. "My father came out here after the war, started with 50 acres and a dream. And now, 800 acres, 200 head of cattle, and some of the finest quarter horses this side of the Mississippi." There was unmistakable pride in his voice. "It's good land, hard land, but good." When the ranch house finally came into view, Olivia understood what he meant. The main house was substantial, 2 stories of sturdy timber with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Nearby stood a large barn, bunkhouse, and various outbuildings. Fields stretched in all directions, dotted with cattle and bordered by split-rail fences. "It's impressive," she said honestly. "It's home," Owen replied simply as he guided the wagon to a stop before the house. Thomas Lawson was waiting on the porch, his large frame settled in a rocking chair, one foot propped on a stool. He was older than Olivia had imagined from his letters, perhaps in his 60s, with a shock of white hair and a beard to match. His face lit up when he saw her. "Miss McBride," he called, attempting to rise before wincing and settling back down. "Welcome to Lawson Ranch." Owen helped her down from the wagon, his hands strong and sure at her waist. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her body, one she quickly dismissed as she moved toward her new employer. "Mr. Lawson, thank you for the opportunity," she said, extending her hand. "I'm very grateful." Thomas took her hand in both of his. "No, my dear, I'm the grateful one. Since my wife passed last winter, this place has been in dire need of a woman's touch. The men try, but—" He gestured vaguely at the house behind him. "I understand," Olivia said softly. "I'll do my best. I've no doubt." Thomas smiled warmly. "Owen will show you to your room. You must be tired from your journey." Owen appeared beside her with her valise in hand. "This way, Miss McBride." He led her through the front door into a spacious main room that served as both parlor and dining area. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, while windows let in the late afternoon light. The furnishings were sturdy and practical, though dusty and somewhat disarranged. It was clear that the house had indeed been without a woman's care for some time. "Kitchen's through there," Owen indicated with a nod. "Father's room is off the main floor on account of his leg. Yours is upstairs, second door on the right." The staircase creaked beneath their feet as they climbed to the second floor. Owen pushed open the door to reveal a modest but comfortable room with a single bed, washstand, chest of drawers, and a rocking chair near the window. The window itself looked out over the mountains to the east. "It's lovely," Olivia said, genuinely pleased. It was certainly more spacious than her cramped quarters in Boston. Owen placed her valise on the bed. "Privy's out back. Bath night Saturday, we heat water on the stove. Breakfast at 5, dinner at noon, supper at 6. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more, then simply added, "Any questions, just ask." "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." He nodded once, then left her alone with her thoughts. Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of exhaustion from her long journey. She had traveled nearly 3,000 miles to escape her past filled with her father's gambling debts and the unwanted advances of his creditor, Silas Hargrove. A shudder ran through her at the memory of Hargrove's ultimatum: marry him or face debtor's prison. Instead, she had fled in the night with what little she could carry, answering an advertisement in the newspaper for a position far away from Boston. Far away from Hargrove's reach. Now, in this remote corner of Oregon, perhaps she could begin again. Olivia unpacked her meager belongings, arranging them carefully in the drawers. She changed from her travel-stained dress into her only other one, a simple blue calico that had seen better days, but was at least clean. After splashing water on her face from the pitcher on the washstand, she twisted her dark hair into a fresh knot at the nape of her neck. Downstairs, she found Thomas Lawson still on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked as she joined him. "Never tire of it, not in 20 years. "It's unlike anything I've seen before," Olivia admitted. "In Boston, buildings had always blocked the horizon. Owen's gone to tell the men we'll have a proper supper tonight." Thomas chuckled. "Been living on beans and bacon since Mrs. Peterson from town stopped coming to help last month. Her daughter had a baby, you see." I'll start supper right away, Olivia said, turning toward the kitchen. No rush. Thomas waved a hand. Let's get acquainted first. Tell me about yourself, Miss McBride. Your letter didn't say much beyond your qualifications. Olivia carefully considered how much to reveal. There's not much to tell. My father passed recently. We had no other family. I saw your advertisement and thought a change of scenery would do me good. Thomas studied her face, his eyes kind but perceptive. Long way to come for scenery. Some distances are worth traveling, she replied quietly. He nodded, seeming to understand what she wasn't saying. Well, you're welcome here for as long as you wish to stay. We're simple folk, work hard, but we take care of our own. Our own. The words warmed her unexpectedly. It had been so long since she'd felt she belonged anywhere. The kitchen proved to be well stocked but disorganized. Olivia set to work immediately, finding ingredients for a hearty stew and biscuits. She was kneading dough when she heard the back door open and close. Owen stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands, watching her. Didn't mean to startle you. You didn't, she lied, her heart racing traitorously. Something about his quiet intensity unnerved her. Men are washing up. 6 of us total tonight, 4 hands, father and me. His eyes moved over the kitchen, noting her progress. Can I help with anything? The offer surprised her. I'm managing, thank you. He nodded, still lingering. Father says you're from Boston. Yes, long way from home. Olivia's hand stilled on the dough. This is home now, Mr. Lawson. Something in his expression softened. Owen, if you're staying, might as well use my given name. Olivia, then, she replied, meeting his gaze. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Olivia, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Then he nodded once and left her to her work. Supper that night was a boisterous affair. The ranch hands, Joe, Frank, Hank, and young Billy, who couldn't be more than 18, were obviously delighted to have decent food and a pretty face at the table. They were respectful but eager to share stories and make her laugh, each trying to outdo the others. Throughout the meal, Olivia was conscious of Owen's quiet presence at the opposite end of the table from his father. He spoke little, but she often caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Miss Olivia, Joe was saying, you sure can cook. Haven't had biscuits this light since my mama made them. They're just flour and lard, she demurred, though pleased by the compliment. It's a gift, Thomas declared, helping himself to another. Mark my words, boys, within a month this place will be transformed. Already improving the view, Hank added with a wink. That's enough, Owen said quietly but with unmistakable authority. The men immediately sobered. Just being friendly, boss, Hank muttered. Be friendly with your manners, Owen replied evenly. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but whether from Hank's comment or Owen's defense, she wasn't sure. Later, after the men had gone to the bunkhouse and Thomas had retired to his room, Olivia found herself alone in the kitchen with Owen. He was drying the last of the dishes she'd washed, his sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. You don't have to help, she said. This is what you hired me for. Never been one to sit while others work. He placed the dried plate on the stack. Besides, gets done faster this way. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. Father likes you. He seems a kind man. He is. Owen hung the dishcloth to dry. Too kind sometimes, trusts too easily. Olivia stiffened slightly. Are you suggesting I shouldn't be trusted, Mr. Lawson? Owen, he corrected. And no, just saying my father sees the good in people. I tend to wait and observe. And what have you observed about me? She couldn't keep the defensive edge from her voice. He studied her for a long moment. That you're running from something or someone. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. You're mistaken. Am I? His voice was gentle, not accusatory. "Your hands are too soft for someone who's done household work all her life. You speak like someone with education, and you flinch when one of the men moves too suddenly near you." She turned away, focusing intently on wiping down the counter. "You're very observant. Have to be in my line of work. Can't tell if a horse is lame or a cow is sick unless you notice the small things." He paused. "Whatever you're running from, you're safe here. That's all I wanted to say." The unexpected compassion in his words made her eyes sting with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you," she managed. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Owen." Alone in her room that night, Olivia stood by the window, gazing at the stars that seemed impossibly bright and close in the clear Oregon sky. She thought of Owen's words, "You're safe here," and wondered if that could possibly be true. Safety had seemed like an impossible luxury for so long. The following weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Olivia rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for the men before they headed out to their daily tasks. Mornings were spent cleaning, baking, and doing laundry. Afternoons often found her helping Thomas with correspondence for the ranch, or reading to him when his gout pained him too greatly to move about. She learned more about the Lawsons during these quiet afternoons. How Thomas had brought his wife and 5-year-old Owen west after the Civil War, determined to build something of his own. How they had survived drought, harsh winters, and even an Indian raid in the early days. How Owen's mother, Elizabeth, had been the heart of the ranch until pneumonia took her the previous winter. "Owen took it hard," Thomas confided one day as they sat on the porch. They were close, those two, always had a special bond. "He seems very dedicated to the ranch," Olivia observed, watching as Owen worked with a spirited young horse in the corral nearby. "Too dedicated." Thomas sighed. "Man his age should have a wife, children, but he just throws himself into the work. Says there'll be time for that later." Olivia said nothing, but her eyes remained on Owen as he moved with the horse, his body language calm and assured. There was something compelling about the way he handled the animal, patient but firm, respectful of its spirit while establishing clear boundaries. "He's good with the horses," Thomas remarked, following her gaze. "Has a gift for it. Always has. I can see that." The horse that had been skittish minutes before was now standing calmly as Owen stroked its neck. "Maybe you'll be good for him," Thomas said suddenly. "He's different since you arrived, more talkative." Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. "I hardly speak to him, Mr. Lawson." "Thomas, please." The older man smiled. "And it's not always about talking, is it?" Before she could respond to this unsettling observation, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. 3 men on horseback were coming up the road to the ranch house. Thomas struggled to his feet, frowning. "Don't recognize them," he muttered. "Stay here." But Olivia had already seen what Thomas hadn't: the badge on the lead rider's chest. Her stomach knotted with fear. Had Hargrove somehow traced her here? Sent the law after her for the pocket watch she'd taken from his desk the night she fled? It had been her father's once, pawned to cover a debt, and she'd felt justified in reclaiming it. But would the law see it that way? The riders stopped before the porch, and the man with the badge touched his hat. "Afternoon. Sheriff James Miller from Pendleton. This is Deputy Collins and Mr. Edwards from the bank." Thomas relaxed slightly. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "Looking for information about cattle rustling in the area. 3 ranches hit in the past month. Thought you might have seen or heard something unusual. Rustlers." Thomas shook his head. "Haven't lost any stock that I know of." He turned toward the corral. "Owen, come up here." Owen secured the horse in the corral before jogging over to join them. His eyes flicked briefly to Olivia, noting her tension before focusing on the visitors. "Sheriff," he acknowledged with a nod. The sheriff explained the situation again while Owen listened intently. "Nothing missing from our herds," Owen confirmed after the sheriff finished. "But we did find tracks crossing our north pasture last week. Thought it was just strays from the Wilkins place." "Might be worth checking again," the sheriff suggested. "These fellows are organized, taking 10, 15 head at a time, running them north to Washington Territory, we think." "I'll have the men do a full count tomorrow," Owen promised. The banker, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. "While we're here, Mr. Lawson, might I have a word about your loan?" Thomas stiffened. "Nothing to discuss, Edwards. Payment's not due for another month." "Yes, but with these rustlers about, the bank is reassessing its risks." Edwards smiled thinly. "Perhaps we could speak privately." Owen's jaw tightened. "Anything you have to say to my father, you can say in front of me." The tension between the men was palpable. Olivia, feeling like an intruder, murmured something about checking on supper and slipped inside. But through the open window she could still hear their conversation. "Interest rates are rising, Lawson. The bank needs additional security on your loan." "The terms were agreed upon," Thomas said firmly. "We've never missed a payment. Times change." Edward's voice was smug. "Either provide additional collateral or prepare to pay the loan in full when it comes due." "That's $3,000, Owen protested. "You know very well, business is business, young man. I suggest you consider selling some of that prize horse stock of yours." "I understand the Army's looking for remounts." Olivia moved away from the window, troubled by what she'd overheard. Financial troubles had been the ruin of her father, and nearly her own ruin as well. The thought of the Lawsons facing similar difficulties pained her in a way she hadn't expected. At supper that night, Thomas made no mention of the banker's visit, but the lines in his face seemed deeper, his manner more subdued. Owen, too, was quieter than usual, responding to the ranch hand's conversation with only brief comments. After the meal, when the men had gone and Thomas had retired early complaining of his gout, Olivia found Owen on the porch, smoking a cigarette and staring out at the night. "I made coffee," she said, offering him a cup. He took it with a nod of thanks. "Didn't mean for you to hear all that business with Edwards today." "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," she admitted. "Is it serious? The loan situation?" Owen took a long drag on his cigarette before answering. "Could be. Bank loaned us money to expand last year. Buy more breeding stock, improve the water system. Edwards wants to change the terms now that we've done all the work." "That's not right." "No, it's not, but it's legal." He exhaled a stream of smoke. "We'll manage, always have. Is there anything I can do to help?" The offer came spontaneously, surprising them both. Owen looked at her then, really looked at her, his eyes searching her face. "Why would you want to?" Olivia met his gaze steadily. "Because you've been kind to me, given me a place when I needed one. We pay you for your work." "There's more to life than what can be paid for in dollars, Owen." Something in his expression softened. "There is indeed." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for the offer, but this is our burden to bear." Olivia nodded, understanding his pride. "Well, if you change your mind, I'm a fair hand with numbers. My father was." She stopped, realizing she'd nearly revealed too much. "Was what? In business," she finished lamely. "I helped with his accounts." Owen studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "I'll remember that." The following days brought a flurry of activity to the ranch. A full count confirmed that none of the Lawson cattle had been stolen, but Owen doubled the night patrols anyway. The men took turns riding the boundaries, watching for any sign of rustlers. Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to Owen's quiet strength. She watched him from the kitchen window as he trained horses, mended fences, and directed the men with calm authority. There was something reassuring about his steady presence, so different from her father's mercurial nature or Hargrove's threatening intensity. One afternoon, as she was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, Owen rode in from checking the far pastures. He dismounted near her, leading his horse toward the water trough. "Hard day?" she asked, noting the dust coating his clothes and the weariness in his shoulders. "Long one." He removed his hat, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "Found tracks again, fresh ones. Rustlers passed through our north section last night. Did they take any cattle? No. Looks like they were just passing through." He let his horse drink, then added, "Sheriff's forming a posse. Wants me to join them tomorrow." Olivia's hand stilled on the sheet she was hanging. "Is that dangerous?" "Could be." Owen glanced at her. "Worried about me, Miss McBride?" There was a teasing note in his voice that she'd never heard before. It drew a reluctant smile from her. "Someone has to be. You certainly don't worry enough about yourself." "Never been much point in worrying," he said, his eyes holding hers. "Life happens as it will. That's a convenient philosophy for a man who takes unnecessary risks." Owen laughed then, a full, rich sound that transformed his face. "You sound like my mother. She used to say the same thing." "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. His expression grew wistful. "You would have liked her. She had no patience for foolishness either." Before Olivia could respond to this comparison, young Billy came running up, out of breath and excited. "Boss, rider coming in fast from town." "Looks like Joe." Owen's demeanor changed instantly, all business again. "Get my rifle from the house, Billy. Then tell Hank and Frank to come up from the lower field." Joe arrived moments later, his horse lathered and blowing hard. "Rustlers hit the Jenkins place last night," he reported breathlessly. "Killed old man Jenkins and his son when they tried to stop them. Sheriff's gathering men now." "How many rustlers?" Owen asked sharply. 6, maybe 7. Heading north with 30 head of Jenkins' cattle." Owen turned to Billy, who had returned with the rifle. "Saddle me a fresh horse and get my saddlebags from the tack room." "I'll tell your father," Olivia said, already moving toward the house. But Thomas had heard the commotion and was hobbling onto the porch, his face grim. "Be careful, son. These aren't just thieves now, they're killers." "I know, Pa." Owen checked the rifle Billy brought him. "We'll be back by tomorrow night, God willing." "God willing," Thomas echoed, his eyes troubled. As Owen mounted the fresh horse Billy brought, his eyes found Olivia's. Something unspoken passed between them, concern on her part, reassurance on his. He touched the brim of his hat to her before riding off with Joe, dust billowing behind them. The house seemed emptier without Owen's presence, though he'd never been particularly loud or demonstrative. Thomas was restless and irritable, his gout and his worry making him poor company. Olivia kept busy with her usual tasks, but her mind frequently strayed to Owen and the danger he might be facing. "He'll be fine," Thomas told her over supper, misreading her silence. "Been in tighter spots before." "I'm sure he has," she replied, forcing a smile. "More coffee." That night, unable to sleep, Olivia sat by her window watching the moonlit landscape. Somewhere out there, Owen and the others were tracking dangerous men through the darkness. Men who had already killed twice and wouldn't hesitate to kill again. The realization that she cared deeply what happened to Owen Lawson came as a surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. In the weeks she'd been at the ranch, he had become a steady presence in her life, reliable, honorable, and unexpectedly kind beneath his reserved exterior. But caring for someone meant risking loss, and Olivia had lost too much already. Her mother at birth, her father to his vices, her security to Hargrove's threats. She'd come to Oregon to start anew, not to entangle her heart with a man who rode off to face danger without a second thought. Yet as she finally drifted to sleep, it was Owen's face she saw in her mind's eye, and his safe return she prayed for most fervently. The following day dragged endlessly. Olivia tried to distract herself with work, taking on extra tasks like organizing the pantry and mending shirts that didn't truly need mending. Thomas alternated between pacing as much as his gout would allow and sitting silently on the porch, watching the road from town. It was past sunset when they finally heard riders approaching. Thomas struggled to his feet, squinting into the gathering darkness. "Can't tell how many," he muttered anxiously. Olivia's heart pounded as she joined him on the porch, straining to see. The riders emerged from the shadows, 4, 5, 6 of them. Owen was at the front, his posture straight and sure. Relief flooded through her with such intensity that she had to grip the porch railing for support. "They're back," she said unnecessarily, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank God," Thomas replied, the tension visibly leaving his body. The riders dismounted in the yard, their faces grim and dusty. Owen spoke briefly to the men before approaching the porch. His eyes met Olivia's first, something warm flickering in their depths before he turned to his father. "Got them," he said simply. 5 men, 2 dead, 3 in the Pendleton jail. "And our side?" Thomas asked. "Deputy Collins took a bullet in the arm. He'll recover." Owen removed his hat, revealing a streak of dried blood at his temple. "Everyone else is fine." Olivia gasped softly. "You're hurt." Owen touched the wound absently. "Just a graze. Bullet ricocheted off a rock." "Come inside," she ordered, suddenly finding her voice. "That needs cleaning." To her surprise, he followed without protest, allowing her to guide him to a chair in the kitchen while she gathered water and clean cloths. Thomas hovered nearby, asking questions about the pursuit and capture as Olivia gently cleaned the wound. "They made a stand in a box canyon north of the Umatilla River," Owen explained, wincing slightly as Olivia dabbed at the dried blood. "Had no choice but to fight it out. 2 of them tried to shoot their way past us. Didn't make it." "And the cattle?" Thomas asked. "Most were recovered. Sheriff's men are driving them back to the Jenkins place now." Owen's expression darkened. "Won't bring back Jenkins and his boy, though." "No," Thomas agreed soberly. "Martha Jenkins is a widow now with 3 young ones to raise. Community will help her," Owen said. "I told the sheriff we'd contribute. Beef for the winter, at least." Thomas nodded approvingly. "We'll do what we can." Olivia finished cleaning the wound, her fingers gentle as she applied a small bandage. "You were lucky," she said quietly. "A fraction to the left and that bullet wouldn't have just grazed you." Owen caught her hand as she withdrew it, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "But it did just graze me," he said, his eyes holding hers. "I'm fine, Olivia." Her name on his lips sent a flutter through her stomach. She was suddenly very aware of how close they were, of Thomas watching them with interest, of Owen still holding her hand. "You need rest," she said, carefully extracting her fingers from his grasp. "And food. I'll heat up some stew." Later, after Owen had eaten and gone to bed at her insistence, Olivia sat with Thomas on the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. "He likes you," Thomas said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's kind to everyone," Thomas chuckled. "Known my son for 30 years. Kind to everyone isn't how most would describe him. Fair, yes. Honest, absolutely. But Owen keeps people at a distance, except you." "Mr. Lawson, Thomas, I don't think it's all right," he interrupted gently. "You don't have to say anything, just an old man's observation." He paused, then added more seriously, "Whatever brought you to Pendleton, whatever you're running from, it doesn't matter to us. Who you are now is what matters." Olivia stared at him, stunned by his perception and his acceptance. "How did you know?" Thomas smiled sadly. Been alive too long not to recognize fear when I see it. First week you were here, you jumped at every unusual sound, watched the road like you were expecting trouble to find you." He patted her hand. "Don't worry, your secrets are safe with us." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "No need for thanks among family," Thomas replied, and the simple inclusion in that word family touched her more deeply than he could know. The following days brought a return to routine, though the events with the rustlers remained the primary topic of conversation around Pendleton. Owen's wound healed quickly, leaving only a faint mark at his temple. If he noticed Olivia's increased attention to him, he gave no sign of it, though their exchanges were marked by a new warmth and ease. Autumn arrived with cooler temperatures and preparations for winter. The men worked from dawn to dusk, bringing in hay, repairing buildings, and selecting which cattle to sell before the snows came. Olivia found herself increasingly involved in the ranch operations, helping Thomas with accounts and correspondence while maintaining the household. One crisp October morning, Owen found her in the kitchen, up to her elbows in bread dough. "Need to ride into town for supplies," he said, leaning against the door frame. "Thought you might want to come along, get a change of scenery." Olivia looked up, surprised by the invitation. "I'd like that," she said after a moment's consideration. "Give me half an hour to finish this bread and change. Take your time." There was an unusual lightness to his manner. No rush today. An hour later, they were traveling the road to Pendleton in the wagon, a list of supplies needed tucked in Owen's pocket. The day was glorious, the sky a deep blue against the golden hills, leaves turning crimson and amber on the trees along the creek. "It's beautiful here," Olivia said, breathing in the clean, crisp air. "Different from home, but beautiful. You miss Boston?" Owen asked, glancing at her. She considered the question honestly. "I miss certain things, bookshops, theater, the ocean," she smiled. "But no, I don't miss Boston itself. Not anymore." "Good." His reply was simple, but the way he said it suggested deeper meaning. Pendleton was bustling when they arrived. Owen handled the wagon expertly through the crowded streets to the general store, where he helped Olivia down with careful hands. "Meet you back here in an hour," he suggested. "Thought you might like some time to look around on your own, maybe visit the dressmaker's shop." The thoughtfulness of this surprised her. "I'd like that, thank you. Nothing to thank me for." He tipped his hat and headed into the store, leaving Olivia to explore the small but growing town. She wandered along the boardwalk, enjoying the simple pleasure of looking in shop windows and greeting townspeople, who now recognized her as the Lawson housekeeper. At the dressmaker's shop, she indulged in purchasing fabric for a new dress, her first such luxury since arriving in Oregon. As she was leaving the shop, a newspaper headline caught her eye from the stand outside the Pendleton Tribune office. "Boston banker found dead in hotel room." Olivia froze, then quickly paid the newsboy for a copy with trembling hands. Finding a quiet spot on a bench, she read the short article. "Silas Hargrove, prominent Boston banker, was found dead in his hotel room in Sacramento, California, last month. Authorities believe Hargrove, who was traveling on business, suffered a fatal heart attack. His body has been returned to Boston for burial." Hargrove leaves behind no family, but was a respected figure in Boston financial circles. Olivia stared at the words, unable to fully process their meaning. Hargrove was dead. The man who had threatened her, who had forced her to flee across the country, whose shadow had followed her even to Oregon, was dead. She was truly free. Tears filled her eyes, not of grief, but of overwhelming relief. The constant fear that had been her companion for months suddenly lifted, leaving her light-headed with the realization that she no longer needed to look over her shoulder. Olivia. She looked up to find Owen standing before her, concern evident in his expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "Are you ill?" She shook her head, unable to speak for a moment. Wordlessly, she handed him the newspaper, her finger pointing to the article. Owen read it quickly, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Hargrove?" he asked. "You knew this man?" "He was." She took a deep breath. "He was the reason I left Boston. He held my father's debts after his death, wanted to force me to marry him to cancel them." The words tumbled out, secrets she'd kept for so long finally finding release. "When I refused, he threatened to have me imprisoned for the debts. So I ran." Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes, followed quickly by anger. "He threatened you?" "Yes." Olivia wiped at her tears. "But he's gone now. He can't find me anymore." Owen's hand covered hers, warm and steady. "He would never have found you here," he said firmly. "I wouldn't have let him near you." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her heart skip. "Thank you," she whispered. He helped her to her feet, his hand remaining on hers. "Let's go home, Olivia." Home. The word had never sounded so right. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. Olivia felt lighter than she had in months, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Occasionally, she would catch Owen watching her, his expression thoughtful. "I should have told you and your father the truth from the beginning," she said finally, "about why I came here." "You told us what we needed to know," Owen replied. "That you needed work and a place to stay. The rest was your business." "Still, I feel I deceived you," he shook his head. "You protected yourself, no shame in that." After a moment, he added, "Thank you for trusting me with the truth now." At the ranch, Thomas was waiting on the porch, having spotted the wagon's approach. Olivia made a decision then, impulsive but right. "I want to tell your father everything," she said to Owen. "No more secrets." Owen nodded approvingly. "He'll understand," and he did. That evening, after supper, Olivia told Thomas the full story: her father's gambling, his death, Hargrove's threats, her flight across the country, and finally the news of Hargrove's death. Thomas listened without interruption, his weathered face compassionate. "You're a brave young woman, Olivia McBride," he said when she finished, "taking your fate in your own hands that way." "Or a foolish one," she admitted. "I had no plan beyond getting away. Sometimes that's enough." Thomas smiled warmly. "Well, now that's settled, I hope this means you'll stay on with us, unless you're planning to return to Boston." Return? The thought hadn't even occurred to her. "No, I have nothing to return to. My life is here now." She glanced at Owen, who was watching her intently. "If you'll have me." "Always," Thomas said firmly. "For as long as you wish." That night, Olivia stood again at her bedroom window, looking out at the star-filled sky. The relief of unburdening her secrets was profound, but it was accompanied by a new awareness of her feelings for Owen. Feelings that had been growing steadily since her arrival. Did he feel the same? There were moments when she thought he might, the way his eyes followed her, the gentle touch of his hand helping her down from the wagon, his quiet concern for her welfare. But Owen Lawson was not an easy man to read, and she had been wrong about men before. Winter arrived with a vengeance in late November, bringing heavy snows and bitter cold that confined them largely to the house and barn. The ranch hands moved into the bunkhouse full-time, venturing out only to feed livestock and perform essential chores. These quiet days brought Olivia and Owen into closer proximity than ever before. With outdoor work limited, he spent more time in the house, helping her with indoor repairs, playing checkers with his father in the evenings, or simply sitting by the fire reading while she sewed or baked. They developed a comfortable rhythm, working together without needing many words. Olivia found herself noticing small things about him, the way one corner of his mouth lifted slightly when he was amused, but trying not to show it. How his hands, rough from work, could be incredibly gentle when handling delicate objects. The deep timbre of his voice when he read aloud to his father on evenings when Thomas's eyes were troubling him. One afternoon, as a blizzard raged outside, Olivia was in the kitchen preparing stew for supper when Owen came in from checking the barn. "Storm's getting worse," he said, stamping snow from his boots. "Drifts are up to the corral rails already. Are the animals secure?" she asked, handing him a cup of hot coffee. "All settled." He took the coffee gratefully, his fingers brushing hers in the exchange. "Might be snowed in for a few days at this rate." "We have plenty of supplies," Olivia assured him, "and I just baked bread this morning." Owen smiled, the rare full smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Always prepared, aren't you?" "I try to be." She returned to stirring the stew, suddenly self-conscious under his steady gaze. "It's a habit, a good one." He leaned against the counter, watching her work. "Father says his mother was like that, always thinking 3 steps ahead." "A woman has to, especially out here." Olivia glanced up at him. "The wilderness doesn't forgive poor planning." "No, it doesn't." He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "You've adapted well to ranch life." "Better than most city folk would." "I wanted to adapt," she said simply. "This is home now." Something in Owen's expression shifted, a softening around his eyes. "Yes, it is." After a moment, he added more quietly, "I'm glad you think so." The storm continued for 3 days, howling around the house and dropping nearly 2 feet of snow. They passed the time indoors, the enforced closeness drawing them all closer. Thomas told stories of the early days on the ranch. Owen repaired tack and tools at the kitchen table, and Olivia experimented with recipes from her mother's old cookbook that she'd carried all the way from Boston. On the 4th day, the storm finally broke, leaving a pristine white world bathed in brilliant sunshine. The beauty of it took Olivia's breath away as she stood on the porch, wrapped in her shawl. "Want to see something?" Owen asked, appearing beside her in his heavy coat and gloves. "What is it?" "Have to show you." He held out a hand. "Dress warm." Curious, Olivia quickly donned her coat, gloves, and the knitted scarf Thomas had given her for her birthday in September. When she returned to the porch, Owen was waiting with 2 horses saddled. "Can you ride in all this snow?" he asked. "I can try," she replied with more confidence than she felt. Her riding skills were still developing, though Owen had been teaching her on Sunday afternoons when weather permitted. He helped her mount, his hands strong and sure at her waist. "Stay close behind me," he instructed. "We won't go far." They rode through deep snow, following a path Owen broke with his larger horse. The world around them was transformed, familiar landmarks made new under their white blanket. Trees bowed with the weight of snow on their branches, the mountains in the distance sharp and clear against the blue sky. After about 20 minutes, Owen led them to the top of a small hill overlooking the ranch. From this vantage point, Olivia could see the entire valley spread below them, the buildings of the ranch like a child's toys in the vast white landscape. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her words forming small clouds in the cold air. "My favorite view," Owen admitted, dismounting and helping her down from her horse. "Mother and I used to ride up here when I was young." She said it helped her remember how blessed we were, even when times were hard. The mention of his mother was rare, and Olivia recognized the significance of him sharing this place with her. "Thank you for showing me." He nodded, his eyes on the vista before them. "Thought you'd appreciate it." They stood in companionable silence for several minutes, simply absorbing the peaceful beauty surrounding them. Olivia was acutely aware of Owen beside her, his solid presence a source of both comfort and an increasingly familiar flutter in her chest. "Olivia," he said finally, his voice unusually hesitant, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." She turned to face him, her heart suddenly pounding. "Yes. Edwards from the bank came by last week while you were visiting Mrs. Jenkins in town." Owen's gaze was direct but gentle. "Made an offer for the ranch." Whatever Olivia had been expecting, it wasn't this. "An offer, but it's your home." "A generous offer," Owen continued. "More than it's worth, truthfully. Father's been struggling with the decision." "But you love this land," she protested. "Your father built it from nothing. You can't sell it." "That's what I told him." Owen's expression softened, but it got me thinking about the future, about what I want. "And what do you want?" Olivia asked, hardly daring to breathe. Owen took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "That depends partly on you, on me," she whispered. "These past months having you at the ranch in our lives." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "It's changed things, changed me." Olivia's heart was racing now. "Owen, let me finish," he said gently. "I've never been good with words, but I need to say this right." He took a deep breath. "Before you came, I was just existing, working the ranch, taking care of father, getting through each day. Then you arrived and suddenly there was more color, purpose." He reached for her hand, holding it carefully in his gloved one. "I don't want you as our housekeeper, Olivia. I want you as—" He hesitated again, then continued more firmly, "I want you as my wife, if you'll have me." Olivia stared at him, joy and fear mingling in her heart. "Owen, you don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "I know it's sudden, and I'm not offering much, just a hard-working rancher and a life that's never easy. But I promise to be a good husband, to protect you, provide for you, respect you." "It's not that," she interrupted, tears filling her eyes. "It's just, are you sure? I came here with nothing. No family, no money, just secrets and trouble, I'm sure." His voice was steady, certain. "I've never been more sure of anything." "What about your father, the ranch?" "Father approves." Enthusiastically, in fact. A smile touched Owen's lips. "As for the ranch, it's part of me, but it's not all of me, not anymore." He squeezed her hand gently. "What matters is you, Olivia, us." The tears spilled over then, trailing warm tracks down her cold cheeks. "I'm afraid," she admitted softly. "Of what?" "Of not being enough." The fear that had haunted her for so long finally found voice. "I'm not like the women who grew up out here. I don't know all the things a rancher's wife should know. What if I disappoint you?" Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes. With gentle hands, he drew her closer, his arms encircling her protectively. "Olivia," he said, his voice low and fervent, "you're everything. Everything I never knew I needed. Everything I want for the rest of my life." The words washed over her like a healing balm, soothing fears she'd carried for so long. "Do you mean that?" "I've never said anything I meant more." He touched her cheek tenderly. "I love you, Olivia McBride, with everything that I am." "I love you too," she whispered, the truth of it resonating through her entire being. "So much." Owen's smile was radiant as he lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle yet filled with promise. Olivia's arms wound around his neck, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened, warming her despite the winter chill. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes, then?" he asked, a hint of teasing in his voice. Olivia laughed, joy bubbling up inside her like a spring. "Yes, Owen Lawson, yes, I'll marry you." They were married on Christmas Day, 1885, in the parlor of the ranch house. Thomas, beaming with happiness, gave Olivia away. The ranch hands served as groomsmen, and Mrs. Jenkins and her daughter stood as Olivia's attendants. The local minister performed the ceremony before a small gathering of neighbors and friends from Pendleton. Olivia wore a dress of deep blue velvet, a wedding gift from Thomas, with her mother's locket around her neck. Owen, unusually formal in a new suit, couldn't take his eyes off her throughout the ceremony, his face reflecting a joy that matched her own. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared, and as Owen kissed her, Olivia felt the last pieces of her heart, so long guarded, finally open completely to this man, this life, this future they would build together. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Owen and Olivia moved into the larger upstairs bedroom, which Owen had spent weeks secretly renovating as a wedding gift. Thomas, delighted to have a daughter-in-law and the promise of grandchildren, seemed to grow younger and more energetic despite his continuing struggles with gout. Spring brought new life to the ranch, calves in the pastures, foals in the corral, and seeds sprouting in the kitchen garden Olivia had expanded. The banker Edwards made one more attempt to purchase the ranch, only to be firmly rejected by both Lawson men. Instead, they refinanced their loan through a new bank opening in Pendleton, one owned by a rancher who understood the cycles and challenges of agricultural life. By summer, Olivia had news of her own to share. On a warm evening in July, as she and Owen sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby," she said softly, watching his face for his reaction. Owen's expression transformed from confusion to wonder to joy in the span of heartbeats. "A baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're sure? Mrs. Jenkins confirmed it yesterday." Olivia smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. "In February we'll be parents." Owen gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "Both of you already." When they told Thomas the news, the older man wept unabashedly, embracing them both. "Your mother would be so happy," he told Owen. "So proud of the man you've become, the family you're building." The months that followed were busy ones. The ranch prospered under Owen's management and Olivia's careful accounting. They hired 2 more hands to help with the expanding herds. Thomas, energized by the prospect of a grandchild, threw himself into carving a cradle from pine wood, the same as he had done for Owen 30 years before. As Olivia's body changed with the growing child, her confidence in her place at the ranch, in their community, and in Owen's heart deepened as well. The fear of not being enough, not knowing enough, not contributing enough, not deserving enough faded like morning mist under the steady sun of Owen's love and her own growing capabilities. On a snowy February night in 1887, after 18 hours of labor with Mrs. Jenkins attending and Owen pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door, Olivia gave birth to a healthy son. They named him James Thomas Lawson, after Owen's maternal grandfather and his father. "He's perfect," Owen whispered, cradling his son with careful hands, tears shining in his eyes. "Just like his mother." Olivia watched them together, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she admitted. "After everything, to find this." Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed, their son nestled between them. "You deserve every happiness, my love, and I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." 3 years later, their daughter Elizabeth Olivia joined the family, followed by another son, William Owen, 2 years after that. The Lawson Ranch continued to thrive, becoming one of the most successful operations in the county under the joint management of Owen and Olivia. Thomas lived to see all 3 of his grandchildren and remained an active part of ranch life until his peaceful passing in his sleep at the age of 82 in 1896. They buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch, beside his beloved wife, Elizabeth, in the small family cemetery that would one day include them all. On a warm summer evening in 1900, 15 years after Olivia had first stepped off the train in Pendleton, she and Owen sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching their children play in the yard. James, now 13, was showing his younger siblings how to lasso a fence post, his movements already reminiscent of his father's confident grace. "Penny for your thoughts," Owen said, reaching for her hand in a gesture that had never lost its tenderness over the years. "I was just thinking about that day you brought me to the hill," Olivia replied, smiling at the memory, "when I told you I was afraid of not being enough." Owen squeezed her hand gently, "And I told you the truth that you were everything. You did." She looked out at their children, their home, the life they had built together. "And somehow along the way I came to believe it." "Good," Owen said simply, "because it's still true, more true now than ever." As the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Olivia leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that she had found not just a home, but a place where she was truly enough, where, in fact, she was everything.